the options for medical connectors, whether the right choice is to choose an off-the-shelf connector or to design a custom medical connector for your application. One of the things we'd like to do is understand the available options, whether using an off-the-shelf connector. Off-the-shelf connectors are available by a wide variety of companies: Amphenol, Fisher, Hiroshi, Hypertronics, Limo, Odoo, and many others. Or to use what we refer to as a hybrid connector, and that's taking part of an off-the-shelf connector and modifying it to make it unique or custom. Or to use a fully custom designed connector specific to your application. There's advantages and disadvantages to each of those scenarios. Off-the-shelf connectors are available from, again, many manufacturers in many different configurations. One of the advantages of using an off-the-shelf connector is there's typically no investment required for tooling. An off-the-shelf connector typically requires a smaller investment in your engineering time. One of the disadvantages of off-the-shelf connectors is very often lead times can be really long. Our company, while we design and manufacture custom connectors, we also produce many products using off-the-shelf connectors, and we're very often faced with lead times of 12 to 14 to 16 weeks for connectors from the major manufacturers. The unit cost for off-the-shelf connectors can be quite high, but the main thing is if you buy an off-the-shelf connector, you need to make sure that your design fits the connector rather than the connector fitting your design. A step away from an off-the-shelf connector would be what we call a hybrid connector, and it allows you to have a custom look and feel by using stock connector bodies. There's a lower design and engineering cost than a fully custom connector, a lower investment in tooling than a custom connector, but a hybrid connector can actually have improved performance and definitely an improved aesthetic appeal by overmolding onto stock connector bodies. The downside is the connector bodies, lead time for those can also be very long. And here's some examples of hybrid connectors we've done. These are Hypertronics Hypergrip connectors with custom overmolded strain reliefs. The strain reliefs are not only very functional as a strain relief, providing bend relief, but this device manufacturer has color-coded the strain reliefs to match the receptacles on their device. It's an example of an Amphenol connector with a custom overmolded strain relief, and a small Hiroshi connector where we've overmolded the strain relief and also overmold lot information into the connector. For a custom connector, truly we take the attitude is we'll design a connector to match your requirements specifically. And with a custom connector, it's very easy to incorporate electronics, whether they be active or passive, into the connector. Easy to incorporate a logo into the connector, and for this particular customer, while The engineering department certainly had some input when the marketing people were told that they could prominently display their logo on the connector. That really made them very excited. And probably most importantly, if there is sufficient volume, a custom connector can actually be less expensive than an off-the-shelf connector. But the downside of a custom connector is there will be an investment in custom tooling. Custom tooling will generally lead to a lower per unit cost. One of the advantages of custom connector is, this is an example where the connector was designed to match the contour of the case of the device. This was a customer that produced a their ventilator was designed to be plugged into an RS-232 port of a computer, and no new computers have RS-232 ports. So we helped them design a connector that would convert the signal to USB, and in doing so, we overmold an active circuitry. This was an example. This customer really wanted a pretty simple cable assembly, but in order to make the entire cable assembly important, we looked at the connector, and not only the plug part of the connector, but we were able to help them achieve their cost target by eliminating a mating receptacle. So this plug is designed to connect directly into their PCB. And that combination of eliminating a receptacle and providing a relatively simple plug helped them achieve their cost target. One of the other advantages of designing a custom connector is it is possible to make the connection process fairly intuitive. And this D-shaped connector, when you pick it up, you'll just naturally put your thumbs on the flat surfaces and literally without looking, connect this thing together. You don't have to look for arrows, which way to orientate it. If a custom connector is designed properly, the user should be able to pick it up and without thinking about it, either join two connectors together or plug it into the receptacle properly. In thinking about connectors and what's required, we start out trying to gather design input, maximum voltage and current. Is this connector going to have to withstand defibrillation? Dielectric withstand? What sort of shielding is going to be needed in the connector? Bandwidth. We start looking at the mechanical requirements. If you're designing a connector, how big is the cable? What is the diameter of the cable going into that connector going to be? We very often work with customers where they want a very small connector, and yet because of the number of connectors and shielding and strengthening of it, they have a cable that's going to be nearly 200 thousandths in diameter. That's going to dictate that the connector size is going to have to be relatively large. What is the cable jacket material going to be? Number and types of pins or sockets, and the specifications for each of those need to be defined. The contact termination, whether it's be soldered, crimp, or IDC, and are there size constraints and ergonomic features that need to be incorporated into the connector. We are constantly asked to produce smaller and smaller connectors, and while it is not difficult to produce a smaller connector, one of the things we caution device manufacturers is don't make the connector so small that it's difficult to use? And what is the expected life? Other design input requirements, the orientation, will it be a straight-in connector, right angle, or some other configuration? Does the connector need to have keying or polarization? Does the connector need to have a locking mechanism, or can it depend on a pressure fit? Where we don't use the locking mechanism, we try to make sure that the retention force is not achieved by plastic to plastic, but the retention force is achieved by the mating between the pins and the contacts. Plastic will wear fairly easily, but a pin to a contact is something that you can achieve many, many thousands of mate and unmate cycles. What is the desired mate and unmate force? What is the number of mate and unmate cycles desired? Does the connector need to be able to withstand rollover by a hospital bed or a cart? And what does the lateral force withstand? Very often, connectors will stick out of the side of the device, and is it possible that someone is going to bump into that connector, and if so, how much force does that need to be able to withstand? What are the environmental requirements for sealing and ingress protection? Will the connector and the cable assembly need to be cleaned? Will it need to be immersed? Or will it be cleaned by wiping? More importantly, will it need to withstand sterilization? ETO and gamma are fairly easy to withstand. If the connector needs to withstand 1,000 autoclave cycles, certainly it's going to have to be designed specifically to do that. Connectors are really pretty simple devices. Most of them have a hard plastic insulator which holds the pins or sockets, and it may include a keying feature. The pins and sockets themselves are really another very important consideration of a connector. The plating, the thickness of the plating, how many times do you expect these pins and sockets to be mated and unmated? If the number of cycles is very high, you typically require a large amount of gold plating. Most of the connectors which we design have at least 2 molding cycles. The first or inner mold is typically a hard plastic, and it tends to hold everything together, gives the connector some inherent strength. And then that's followed up with a outer mold. The outer mold can provide a nice feel, a nice look. The outer mold can offer a place for branding, whether it be molded in branding or a label that's applied. And our company, Affinity Medical Technologies, we are not a connector company. We don't manufacture and sell connectors to others. We design connectors as an integral part of a medical interconnect system. And while we have designed many connectors and those designs are typically proprietary, we can use that experience to help new customers design unique and cost-effective connectors. And one thing that's significant is we are not married to any specific connector brand. We buy connectors from every major connector company, and if that's the right solution, that's what we recommend to our customers. If a custom connector is a better solution, then that's what we might recommend. We really strive to provide the most appropriate solution to the application. In summary, a custom connector solution allows each and every design element to be addressed and to be incorporated into the connector. A custom connector may be more cost-effective and have a shorter lead time, actually a much shorter lead time than a off-the-shelf connector. It's fairly simple to incorporate electronic components in a custom connector, and branding can be incorporated either free or at very little extra cost. These are examples of some of the custom connectors we've done. We never design these in a vacuum. These, while we like to say there are designs, they are all designed in conjunction with our OEM partners. We invite you to contact us either on the web at affinitymedical.com. We love to have people come and visit us. We moved over the weekend to our new plant in Costa Mesa, and you can see our names. We thank you for attending. If any of you would like a copy of the presentation, we have those available for you electronically. Thank you very much.